Hi, my name is Paula Dickerman, and I'm a volunteer with Equal Justice in Needham. I found out about EJN in the fall of 2020 when I attended a locally sponsored virtual event on racial justice. And what interested me is that I heard that there was a group of people at EJN who were working on housing issues. I feel personally, very deeply, that we have an obligation and an opportunity to make progress toward a more equitable, diverse region where people of all backgrounds and all cultures and all economic situations can feel welcome and have access to the same amenities that we enjoy here in Needham. So one step toward that vision is for us to provide more housing choice, more housing types, more price points, so that people who want to live in our community and people who want to stay in our community are able to do that. I've met a lot of wonderful Needham neighbors at EJN, one of whom is Peter Olive, who will be our host today. Peter will be interviewing our newest Select Board member, Kevin Keane.
Hello, and welcome to Moving Forward Together with Equal Justice in Needham. I'm Peter Olive, an EJN participant. My guest today is Kevin Keane, a longtime Needham resident and a recent addition to the 5-member Needham Select Board. He won a special election last month. Thanks for joining us, Kevin.
Thank you, Peter. Happy to be here.
So Kevin, I got a list of questions from the group, and I want to work through them with you. But so, why did you want to run for the select board? Was the town not going in the direction you wanted it to go?
I've always been interested in government. It's also an interest of mine, a passion. I read the papers watch my MSNBC, and it boils my blood. And I thought I should be a bit of to misquote the misparaphrase Gandhi quote about being the change you want to see in the world. I thought I'll do it and I'll jump in. And I am the reluctant candidate. I did not ever think I'd be running for select board member. So neighbors asked me to, we should try this. We should look at it. And slowly we just took steps towards it. And lo and behold, I was in the race. I was in it to win it. And I'm really happy I did. It's been great.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much. The board positions look like they're a lot of work. So thank you so much for spending point. Thank you for your service. What's the workload like? Is it crazy?
It's an amazing job. It really is. I love it. And I've just been there over a month, but it is an education by fire hose. You are, there's so much to learn, so many people to meet. And it's an honor. It really is. Believe it or not, I sound ridiculous saying this, but it really is an honor to be elected by your community. And I think of it every day, and it does humble you.
Is there anything anything that jumped out and surprised you so far?
How government works. It's such an MBA course. I mean, there is a budget set up, a 5-year budget. The schools and the DPW schools know they need copier machines. The DPW knows they have to replace their fleet. It's just it's how Xerox is run. You manage it, you know it, you put it in the budget, you have the request forms. I can't imagine the red tape to keep track of it all, but it goes through, everything's funded and everything's managed. And it's the issues of, as we get closer to that in the next year's budget, that's when things get a little squirrely and we add things, take things off. That's where the soccer game is played. But really to see how the organization and administration of town is just run very businesslike.
Was there any orientation, or did you just they throw you in off the deep end and you have to learn how to swim.
They've been really good. Town hall's been really good. They gave me a 95-page document of their primer. And that was a lot of reading, a lot of links. And then I'm also getting an orientation of all the town departments. That's coming up later this month, early February. And I get to go like spend a day, half a day with all these departments, meet the people, see how they work, what they need. And they say that orientation will be about 25 hours, 30 hours, of just over 2 weeks or something like that. So that's kind of cool.
That sounds great, but it sounds like a pretty heavy workload too.
Yeah, it is a lot of work. And everyone said it would be a lot of work, and they were right.
Kevin, are you working full time, or are you retired, or how can you manage?
Yeah, I live off my, I work. I wish I had a pile of money, but I work. I'm a graphic designer.
Okay.
The benefit is I work at home. My schedule is bendable.
Okay.
So I can always work around stuff. And yes, sometimes I'm doing my client work at 11 o'clock at night, but it all works. But it is, my schedule is difficult.
Well, thanks for taking the time today to talk with us. How do you plan on communicating with the residents? One of the last select boards, select persons sent out a newsletter every Sunday that was well received.
Right. So during the campaign, that came up a lot. That question, everyone wanted to know that. And my preference, I would not want to do what was done, the Sunday night newsletter. I don't think I have the time, but I always say what I want to do is office hours, and I want to make a set date. And actually just started that last week, Wednesday, 9:30, to do office hours. Come in on Zoom and with anything you want. Okay. What's happened though is that may be a bit beyond. It's great that I'm doing this to meet constituents, but I also think, and I'd like to put it on the agenda for the select board, is that I could do office hours with another select board member, like maybe Marianne and I, or Marcus and I, and Dan and Marcus, or Matt, something like that. We could sort of do a round robin of office hours. Because I think people want to be able to meet the select board members in sort of an informal way. There's also talk about doing a sort of an open house. The school committee does something like this as well. Maybe we'll try it. We'll see. We'd serve coffee or something like that, but it'd be good. It'd be good coffee too.
Hard to do that in the time of COVID.
Yeah, I know, right? That's why I like the Zoom office hours.
Yeah. Speaking of COVID, is the town doing everything it's supposed to be doing to keep residents healthy? Should they be doing any more or doing any less?
Yeah, so the town has actually been doing really, when I talk around and see what's going on in all the departments, it seems like they really have a all hands on deck attitude. DPW is doing ventilation work for the schools and the library and the town buildings. The school, and they did the School Health and Safety Committee, working with the Department of Health and the school department. And so I think they really worked a lot. And now, one thing that's coming is the ARPA funds. And in fact, last select board meeting, Dan Gudikins requested $230,000 to make test kits available to Needham, to families of Needham students and town workers. And that was sort of an authorization of ARPA funds that we could do. Curiously, that might be overtaken by Governor Baker's proposal and by Joe Biden's proposal today, I think, to do the similar thing. But, there's a lot of money being thrown around to work on this. So the other issue comes up with mask mandates. And I get a lot of comments about that. And I appreciate this is getting really difficult. Board of Health.
Comments pro or comments against?
Both. Both. And Board of Health has, in this last meeting, declined to make a town-wide mandate. They put one in on the senior center. They put one in on the library because they actually, have students, unvaccinated kids, or people of, at risk.
Mhm.
But there's been a lot of requests to make it a town-wide thing. And I defer to the Department of Health on their expertise. I am not an epidemiologist. I don't know, but I'm following their lead. But I'm sensing there's this thing where the goalposts are moving. And Board of Health actually says, like, it's more important to have boosters than masks, or at least that seems like they're indicating. But yet the school department just wants to buy another 10,000 KN95 masks. And I said that at, Superintendent Gutekamp and to McDonald, it's like, you got to square this up because it's sort of a mixed message. I can appreciate the science, but I also appreciate that there seems to be we need political leadership so that people aren't fighting and squabbling and below that. If we do a mandate, we should do a mask mandate, if it's supported by the science. But we shouldn't go one way or the other and sort of explain it, because I think it begets fights down below.
Yeah, and I just heard that Boston, in order to go to a restaurant in Boston now, you've got to show your vaccine card. So
yes, yeah, I had to do that this weekend.
So, Kevin, I got a few questions about housing, and the cost of housing in Needham is very high. You're well aware of that.
Yes.
A lot of our kids can't afford to come back and live in Needham, and the people that work in Needham and teach in Needham and are police and firefighters, whatever, they can't afford to live in Needham. What can we do about the cost of housing? I mean, any thoughts or any priorities on the select board?
This is a subject, like, that question's a 3-day conference. I'm learning a lot of it, but I'm astounded by how many strands there are in it. There's 40B, friendly 40B. There's senior housing. There's Needham Housing Authority. Then there's vouchers, and there's, tax credit building, and it all goes on. And everyone in Needham is an expert on the real estate market because we're sitting on gold mines. Our houses, I think everyone has Zillow as an app on their iPhone. We all know what a house costs. And I think when we say affordable housing, it brings some negative connotations, and sometimes, like, this is a Statue of Liberty, give me your wretched masses yearning to be free. But the reality is, Needham, we're so expensive that people who make $70,000, $80,000 could possibly, as a family of 4, qualify. I mean, the situation is very dire. I think
you need to have a salary to buy a Needham of like $200,000 a year, or to rent a Needham, you have to make over $100,000 a year.
It's breathtaking. And, and we talk about, so we do all this 40B, and, congratulations to all of us. Needham's fairly progressive on this, more progressive than other towns. And yet I understand that our 40B sort of status, we're good, but it's such a small fraction. But that's the way the state worked it.
Yeah, the 40B is the affordable percentage of affordable housing units.
Correct. And so the mechanism to make sure it's mixed.
Yeah.
But Needham has if you qualify for 40B based on the area median income.
Yeah.
Median income.
Yeah.
An apartment is about $2,000 to $3,000 a month, which is still pretty. This is not the deep discount we were hoping for.
Yes.
And the other issue is senior housing. There's nothing for seniors to move into. A lot of people are house rich, but cash poor, and they're kind of trapped. And then suppose they fall and they can't stay in the house anymore. So what are they to do? They have to either leave the area. So we either need housing for seniors, or we have some idea of an expanded ADUs, in-law apartments or accessory dwelling apartments.
Yeah.
And do we even go wider with that and maybe loosen that up a bit more?
So the
And I
Muzzy,
think
Kevin, the Muzzy site was just sold to a group that's going to develop that site, but I don't think there's any housing that's included in that design. Is there any way that we can ask them to include some housing units in that design or put some pressure on
it
them?
wasn't
Housing was allowed but not required.
correct. Yeah, it was allowed but not required. And we haven't seen plans yet.
Yeah, okay.
And you're right. So you're right, but that's so there's no compulsion necessarily to have to do it.
Yeah.
It could just be all R&D. And I know there was a requirement like 10% retail. So it's not going to be.
What kind of incentive can the select board give? I think it's the Bullfinch group. What kind of incentives can we give them to include housing and affordable housing?
So the ball sits with the planning board. And when Bullfinch Group comes forward and says, we want to do this or this or this, it's like, oh, well, that's special permit. Let's deal. And that's when they can say, we would like to see this, or we'd like to see that. And that's when the negotiations can start, when there's a special permitting issue. That sits with the planning board, not with the select board.
So Kevin, also the Stephen Palmer building over by Greens Field. It's that old school.
Oh yeah, right.
It's senior housing, but it's really not efficient. I don't know if there's an elevator in there. If they can, any possibility of revamping that building to put in more units, mixed use?
That's an interesting point because that's coming up. I think that lease is coming up in 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'd like to look into that because yeah, that's like senior housing, but it's an antiquated building. It probably could use updates. I'm not sure. And the lease ends, and I think it's like clean slate. I'm not sure what's going to happen with that, but that's going to be an interesting one.
It'd be awesome if we could put 50%, affordable housing units when if that building gets redone.
Right. One complaint has been about Needham needs to have a strategy about housing, and that developers will do the minimum. I mean, no fault of their own. They're going to do the minimum. We could probably, we request 10%, but they might be willing to do 20. How deep do we go and push for either more units or deeper discounts? And so I think Needham has to sort of have a strategy that allows them to understand what they're negotiating.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I want to switch over to policing equity for a couple of minutes with you, Kevin. We've got the Marvin Henry lawsuit. Marvin Henry was this black man that was held in handcuffs in the middle of the day out on Highland Avenue for a half an hour. I think it's going on 2 years now. Yeah. And I think the town is getting sued, and probably, maybe rightfully so. I'm not sure. Any comments or thoughts on that?
Yes, so I have to be, as a member of the select board, I cannot speak about this case. It's before a federal judge, Judge Allison Burroughs. And so we can only say that there's a scheduling order in place. I think all pleadings have to be in by February, all discovery by May 2nd. And after that, it continues. And I know nothing more, and I'm really not at liberty to talk about the case.
Okay, I can appreciate that. Last year, the Needham Equal Justice Needham obtained some data from the Needham Police Department and did a summary of that over the last 3 years or 4 years ago. And I just pulled a couple of graphs out. I got a table on there right now that shows the graph of racial disparities in field interviews, and 1/3 of all the field interviews approximately is people of color, BIPOC people, and it's way out of whack with the percentage of people that work and live in Needham, and it just kind of begs the question: Are we training police to stop BIPOC people? Is that what Needham's doing?
That's a good question. Yeah, in light of the Marvin Henry case, I'm a little leery to skate too close, but I think moving forward, the town definitely wants to always have a community where everyone feels welcome, and there's,
Yeah.
And I think that's important. I think, what that may take and require would be additional training, racial training, DEI training, stuff like that.
There's school resource officers, police officer in the public schools, and the interactions with the people of color seem to be like, for example, I've got a couple of numbers highlighted on this. 11% of the interactions are with black kids in the school, but the total number of black population is 2%. The black kids are getting stopped and picked on or interacted with 5.5 times out of proportion to the rest of the groups. Again, I got to ask the question: Are we training our police to stop BIPOC people, or what's going on? Anyway,
yeah, that's a good question. Again, I don't know, and it'd be worth pursuing that. That's a good question.
Okay, I've heard the police chief speak in front of the Nuwari group
Right.
a couple of times, and in front of the select board, and he speaks to some of these issues. But to be honest with you, the answers are not very satisfactory. I don't hear any hard solutions. I don't hear any hard actions. And it's frustrating. It's frustrating to me and frustrating to a lot of people. So
yeah, so they're doing. I think they're doing another. Having Chief Shetler do another report. It's coming in, I think, February, March timeline, and that's supposed to be a more in-depth, extended narrative report. And that's what I'll be looking at. And you're right. I think the select board has a greater interest in overseeing this. I mean, that is actually how it, Kate Fitzpatrick, the town manager, does oversee the police. We oversee Kate Fitzpatrick. So there's a role to play.
So these reports that, these tables that I just shared in this report, these were put together by private citizens paying money to the police department. Right. I would hope that the police department will continue processing their data and reporting on their racial, the breakdown of their racial reporting of the crimes. I haven't seen any data since this was put out a year ago. We haven't seen any breakdown for last year's data or the year before. So
right. So they're doing the dashboard, but I want to see. I'm not sure that's fully operational yet. I'm not sure. It's a good question.
Is that going to break down by racial?
Yeah, it should. Well, I'm not sure, but it should be doing a breakdown, an analysis that anyone like.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah, be a good analysis to see.
All right. Thanks for. I know it's an important subject.
Yeah,
and it's tricky and it's complicated. There's a lot.
In the campaign, it came up a lot. People are very concerned about this.
Right. So I had another question by a couple of people. The board volunteers in the town of Needham. You volunteer for the boards, right. Like you did, but a lot of the boards appointees are appointed. And a couple of people mentioned that they, volunteered for positions on boards, and they never heard back, and they never really figured out, how were they considered? No one ever got back to them. So there was like a lack of transparency in the whole member board selection process.
Okay.
And that's brought up a couple of times. I've heard that. So right. Is there anything that we can do to add transparency to the board volunteer selection process?
That's a good question. That came up a lot in the campaign. A lot of people are like, just how do we do this? And I was a big advocate that a bottom-up approach, especially to get people, sort of the non-historically involved group people, wherever they may be, whatever, economics, racial, whatever, to get them involved in the boards, because that's where so much of what Needham does happens. Mm-hmm. And I think that we have to do that push. And Marianne Cooley, who's vice chair of the select board, that's her charge. She's in charge of appointments. So you can go online and there's the application. You can fill it out and say, I want to, here's sort of who I am, what I'm interested in, and please, I'm happy to serve. If people aren't hearing back from that, they should. Marianne Cooley, who's also co-chairs the Nuwari group, is very aware of the need to promote sort of people of color and sort of get representation involvement in there. So she has been working at it really hard. And I think we've just done a batch of appointments early winter, just must have been mid-December. And so I think there's more, but I think that is the push coming forward. For all the people who feel like, how do you get in? Believe me, I know how hard it is. But sometimes what you need, and this is where it's incumbent upon people in town government, is you invite people, you talk to them and say, you got to do this, try this out. This is something you'd be interested in. And I think that people want to be asked, and they sometimes just need the curtain pulled aside and say, come on in. And it seems like it's a major step, but it's not that big a step, but it does. The appearance is that is, and that can inhibit people from doing it. I know Mary Cooley went to, she talked to a lot of groups in town and just said, let's talk. Who would want to do anything and jump on?
Yeah.
I think overall we have to have a long-term conversation, not just like, we need names, but we need to sort of have a back and forth.
We got to have a transparent process.
Yeah.
We're kind of running out of time here. I wanted to get one other question in about what's Needham doing to respond to the climate crisis? Are we doing enough? What the heck are we doing?
We're not creating a climate action committee or a climate change climate action committee. I'm on it too, which is great. And I'm really excited about it because this is near and dear to me. The state is requesting every town to come up with a climate action plan. And so the committee will create the plan. And
are you talking with Green Needham?
Yes. Oh yeah. They're
great.
They are the gasoline in the tank.
Right.
They're very good, and they've been very, very good.
Yep.
And I would say that one issue is talking about building codes. Green buildings, net zero. That's one push. One thing that's coming up, keep an eye on, is community electricity aggregation, which perhaps the town of Needham could pool itself into customers to Eversource and say, we all want to buy green energy. And an agent a broker or agent, a consultant goes and basically brokers a deal for Needham. Electricity is cheaper than what we're all paying right now. But best of all, it would be sourced by a green generation source. And so it is considered perhaps the single best thing a town can do to fight greenhouse gases.
Okay, that's great. Kevin, we're kind of out of time.
All right.
I want to thank you so much for joining us today. And I really appreciate all the hard work you and all the board members in Needham are doing. It's a tremendous amount of work and everyone really appreciates it. That's all the time we have for today. Kevin, how do people get a hold of you if they want to ask you a question?
My email, kkeane@needhamma.gov. There's also, if you go to the website, the town website, there's my phone number and my email address.
See you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Peter.
Good luck.
Take care.